not show one swing, it shows two swings. In other words, what we are actually seeing that there was another swing that was destroyed over the time, and it's clearly showing that, and it's perfectly matching from where the Great Pyramid of Giza is pointing. So this is from the top view. You can also see in more accurate, let's say, view where that other sphinx was. It was like a lion gate, if you will, between two lines. In the Great Pyramid of Giza, officially there are three known rooms or chambers. The upper chamber was given a name King's Chamber, the middle room Queen's Chamber, and the lowest room, which is under the pyramid, the Unfinished Chamber, which is not unfinished, it has a just different purpose. The engineering was just astonishing. So the structure contains angle tunnels which lead not only into the pyramid but deep underground to areas officially claimed to be still unexplored. To what I was able to discover, according to some reports, the Russian KGB launched the project ISIS in 1961, and the purpose was to obtain eventual alien technology and anything useful about the true builders of the pyramid. They actually applied what is known as ground penetrating radar readings, and right in below that unfinished underground chamber, which is officially stated that it's unfinished, they found something. They found a channel with a huge, they thought that this was a hall of records, if you will, so they did their best, you know, to get into it. And another thing which is quite also interesting, that the Asian structure or the Great Pyramid of Giza was built with a unique materials, out of which some are used for electrical conductivity nowadays. Obviously, they have the plasma technology. They understood the electric nature of the universe they were utilizing. So these facts are leading more and more researchers to believe that the pyramid may have actually had a far more profound purpose. One of the purposes is obviously a power plant, so they were able to literally generate the power from beneath, from the aquifers, you know, from the water, and to transfer it to a usable plasma. So the Great Pyramid of Giza is only one of 180 Asian structures that were discovered in Egypt, and obviously they were using obelisks, if you will, to wirelessly transmit power, if you will. It's just amazing, and they were definitely not primitive, you know, and they were able to transmit this energy. So naturally, we make a conclusion that based on the assumption that Asian civilizations were far more primitive, and obviously that's not the case, right? And not to mention about the Nikola Tesla. And as soon as he actually discovered the electricity in 19th century, there was a huge problem because something was discovered in 1934 in Iraq, which actually contradicted, but they actually discovered the battery, which was further referred as a Baghdad battery, which when those elements combine together, they can produce electricity. And that's one of the items that the Smithsonian Institute, if you will, just couldn't actually retrieve on time, because whenever this happens, they actually send their own people just to retrieve the technology. So some of the materials that are used to build the Great Pyramids are limestone, dolomite, and granite. It is estimated that the Great Pyramid of Giza has 2.3 million stone blocks that weigh from 2 to 30 tons each, and there are even some blocks that weigh 80 tons. The structure has estimated total mass of 6.5 million tons. It's a huge, massive structure. When it was functional and new, if you will, you know, they were covered with white polished limestone, referred as the casing stones. The cuts made in this reflective stone were angled perfectly so it would have a smooth, flat appearance. So you can see here from the evidence is clearly showing us that that those stones were further removed by the Muslims, you know, and they were actually building their religious structures. But when they were fully functional, they were completely reflective, if you will. Even from this picture, you can see the precision how this is done. You know, the cuts made in this reflective stone were angled perfectly so it would have a smooth, flat appearance, as mentioned. That would have made the giant structure brightly reflect the light of the sun like a mirror. In other sense, they were also using the solar energy in a different purpose. And there are some parts like golden caps that were missing. And for example, this is from 1615, drawing by George Sandus. Is also showing us that there is something on the top of the pyramid, if you will. And pretty much you can see as that the mud, you know, that was once existed. You know. So today, all that remains when we go to Giza pyramids are to the inner core not to bother with this mortar. This is quite interesting because the mortar itself is like a cement. It's actually holds all those huge tons of blocks together, and it's quite amazing how they were able to pull the surface limestone out, you know. And this is how huge this thing was finished, you know, because when the Asian conflict appeared and the flooding, this thing was still unfinished, and it's about 42 meters, you know, and it would probably weigh around 1,200 tons. You know, it's a huge, massive piece of stone. So dolomite was used in the inner surfaces of the pyramids. Dolomite is known to increase electrical conductivity directly relative to the amount of pressure on it. In other words, high pressure creates more electrical current. Lining the passageways and underground tunnels of the pyramids is granite, which also is slightly radioactive. And why is that important? Because granite contains high amounts of quartz crystal, metal well-known conductor of piezoelectricity. Piezoelectricity occurs as a result of stress or pressure to the quartz. When you press to the quartz, they actually produces electricity. But nevertheless, the water was the source of the power. When such electrons are given the chance to bypass a section of rock via the metal wire, quite large currents can flow when it's activated. And another interesting fact is that limestone, dolomite, granite, supposedly constructed for a tomb, are in fact analogous to the exact materials we use to make electrical wires. And all three of them also share a relationship with pressure, which increases their electroconductivity. To give you another parallel, northwest of Pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara is an area called the Serapeum. This is how it looks like. It's quite amazing piece of work. And they discovered 24 huge mysterious granite boxes weighing around 100 tons each, the one that I showed you before. Classic Egyptologists say it to be coffins of the pharaohs. Never any mummy was found nowhere nearby. Yeah, this is how it goes. Each of those boxes, as I mentioned, are very heavy. The simplest explanation that classic Egyptologists came up to is that they are coffins of the pharaohs, which does not make any sense, and since they are too large for today's average human size, neither any bones or skeleton remains, so giants, as mentioned, were ever found nowhere near them. So take, for example, this. How come, because there is a space only of 1.5 meters or 1.5 meters, you know, distance from the wall, how is this thing actually transported? It's not even fitting through the door, if you will. You know? So, which does actually imply the conclusion that the Asian had a technology to literally create materialized things, you know, and reshape in so many different ways by using alien technology or similar. As you can see how precise this device is, it's just remarkable. There's certain writings like diagram, like electric diagrams, if you will, in ancient Egyptian language, if you will, because those are not tombs at all. So those supposed sarcophagi were therefore somehow built into the structure with such a precision, so they fit 10,000 of an inch and being perfectly flat. And you can see you cannot even find the error with this. To get to the point, each and every one of these huge boxes also has a giant lid carved from the exact same stone, from the exact same material. A container serving as an energy capacitor or a battery must be made entirely of the same substance, so there is no interruption in the magnetic field. In other words, what they were utilizing those structures as batteries, very similar to what we are using nowadays in our systems. So it's quite amazing that we are actually slowly, as I mentioned, shaping into the society that once existed, if you will. So what we are seeing here is obviously a form of a plasma ball where the electricity is actually showing. In fact, it's not the electricity as the power plant people or the researchers are putting online, but it's all about plasma and different utilization of plasma. Because through plasma as a fourth state of matter, you can actually access the unlimited power of energy. So just to give you an example that the Asians had something similar, what we call crystal balls or similar things we're utilizing. So pretty much, what is different from radiation or similar stuff is that plasma doesn't actually emit radiation at all. It's completely safe for humans to be in the same room with it all through the plasma reaches a temperature hotter than the surface of the sun. And it's quite amazing what those people take. For example, this tool on the middle picture. You can see the reptoid figure actually holding two of those devices, which are connected, you know. And this was unearthed near the Red Sea. You can see it's actually the same device, you know, and it's quite amazing piece of evidence. And there are pictures like this, you know, they're coming most of the thing there is a Photoshop, but there are so many different varieties that are found. Queen's Chamber. Queen's Chamber, it's a quite story on its own. It's exactly halfway between the north and south faces of the pyramid, and there are some measurements that are not important, but it literally, at the eastern end of the chamber, there is a niche 4.67 meters high. The original depth of the niche was 1.04 meters, but has since depended by the treasure hunters. The point that I'm trying to make, there are 4 passageways, 2 that lead from the King's Chamber on the top, 2 that are lead from the Queen's Chamber. The ones that are leading from the King's Chamber, they go to the surface. The ones that are coming from the Queen's Chamber, they are not reaching fully the surface, which are actually marked with number 7 on the diagram, because it has something to do with infrared thermography and actually what they have discovered. So not to bother you too much with this, in 1993, they literally launched a small probe, a robot which was called Open Out 2, and to go through the shafts. And as it go through the shafts, it already found certain evidence that someone else attempted to go through the shafts on their own. In many occasions, the visitors, the tourists in Egypt and in other places, they report hearing sounds of the drilling and the cables that are taken, you know, because they're obviously found chambers that are not publicly announced, if you will, you know, so they're just coming up. Wherever there is a huge discovery, there is always a military presence, and they don't allow anyone nearby, if you will, you know. So these are the passages, and interestingly, one guy actually bought a DVD from the 1993 campaign, you know, and when he started to play around and he adjusted, you know, his footage, he found that there is a shaft very similar to what we are seeing as a ventilation shaft nowadays. But nevertheless, the quite interesting thing is they found a block of stone with 2 copper contacts, if you will, at the end of the shaft. They couldn't make through it, you know. That's why they, in 2002, actually they drilled a small hole just to see what's behind. So this is how it actually looks like, you know, for your information. And those are the ones that, as I mentioned, that they don't actually reach the surface. And the one on the left is on the southern end, and the one on the right is on the northern end of the shaft. And this was actually continued by the Jetty project in 2011, and the improved one that they had like an angle camera that was able to actually see through. And what they discovered is quite interesting, because it shows certain diagrams, you know, proportions in the ancient Egyptian language. You know, obviously they were utilizing this shaft for a different purpose. So in other words, they were generating energy, if you will. So pretty much this is how it looked like. The academia is trying hard to tell us that all those golden or copper wires, you know, are just like a necklaces or similar things, but they're also utilized very similar like we're using today, because they have a huge conductivity, if you will. You know. And this was quite over the internet over the time in 2012, and believe it or not, it was so easily debunked. This as Facebook users solved mystery of Asian unearthed in relic unearthed in Jerusalem. You know, obviously that's one of those devices that were used in the ancient times in abundance. An energy generator still requires a catalyst from another source, that's for sure. Perhaps that is why the pyramids were geographically located over the most natural power generators, the underground rivers and aquifers. You know, so pretty much like a reverse osmosis plant, if you will. Literally, they were so advanced that it's just incredible. You know, and this is the Great Pyramid of Giza by the Nile River around 1925. As you can see, there is a water all around it. You know, and obviously there is a complete parallel, if you know, like with the nuclear reactors, you know, very similar stuff. And this is how it digitally should look like, you know. This is still with one swing button replica from around, so to speak. This is how it should look like, and it's also giving us a corrosion evidence that the water was applied in those days, if you will. So the pyramids are built over aquifers inside limestone layers. Unique layers of rock transmit electricity upward, known as a piezoelectricity. The gold capstone facilitates a conductive path for the transfer of negative ions to the ionosphere. This way, a usable current was generated. An identical form of this technology was built into the Wardenclyffe Tower by Nikola Tesla. And in his memories, British Consul General Henry Salt recounts how he investigated the underground system of catacombs at Giza in 1817 in the company of Italian explorer Giovanni Caviglia. So pretty much it's a cover-up which exists nowadays, and we can see even where the terrain on the bottom right image is showing where the river was in those times. So the piezoelectricity was just one part of it, but as I mentioned, it was just a plasma. But the water was definitely a source of power. So that's why the so-called unfinished chamber, which is at the bottom of the pyramid, we can see so much evidence of erosion because the water was literally going there, and it was generating this energy. This is another parallel which is interesting. It says in the town of Zawet, Elarium in Egypt, there is a structure known as the unfinished pyramid, which looks almost identical to the one found in Abu Rosh, known as the pyramid of Jederfe or something like that. Yeah, crush your tongue. So this is how it looks like. It's quite amazing how it looked when it was functional. But you can see that there is like a reservoir of water that was utilized for the pyramids, and this is pretty much the same stuff. This area here. Military came and they started to put dirt on it, dirt and garbage. And now they actually put it containers, and that's where the military staff is actually living, and it's a secure area. The tourists are not allowed, or the general population is not allowed there, but it's pretty much the same setup. There is underground passage of 32 storage chambers, the same setup, the batteries that were used for the power supply, if you will. And it's quite amazing. So in order to understand, what the Asians were doing, we have to look into the plasma confined by magnetic fields. Magnetic field separation with a ring magnet in the vacuum creates high-speed rotation of plasma. Less vacuum. We have to understand the plasma vortex in the magnetic field also, and the plasma energy shield. So they were also masters in all this stuff. Even nowadays, the shadow government, because it recognized that the UFOs are using plasma in abundance for surveillance, for so many other stuff, they're trying to recreate the effect, if you will, And there is so many different uses of plasma. For example, we can manipulate light and similar things. So in other words, to conclude this part, these blocks, if you will, were used as a plasma container, something which was deliberately shown in the science fiction movies, like a plasma containers, And that's why they were designed in a way that they were designed, because, like I mentioned, there is absolutely no evidence of bones or skeletons found anywhere close. And that's the area that I was talking about, where the military actually took over. You can see the photos there. Obviously, this was all underwater. And this is the diagram of how it looked like. And you can see that it's clearly a water reservoir serving as a water pump for the pyramids, evidence of the outflowing water. And it's even more, there is also opening with a top cover, if you will. It's quite amazing, if you will, which was uncovered in the old days, if you will. So it's quite amazing how they actually created all that structure. So since water was a source of power, it was obviously directed up the limestone based on the principle of capillary action, which happens when a small area of a substance that gets wet absorbs into the entire area of that substance. This is how the water travels over water flowing near or underneath the pyramid could have been absorbed, and as it passes over the limestone, even traveling upward to the top of the structure. Quartz in the tunnels of the pyramids was subject to the stress or vibration, creating piezoelectricity. The high force, the speed of the rising water, and the pressure would be analogous to filling a syringe, generating electromagnetic energy within the structure by the materials within and conducting it upwards to the now missing golden capstone. So pretty much that's what they were doing. The pyramids were usually built on specific geological locations in order to magnify the electromagnetic forces on the planet where the telluric currents were at the strongest. And the electromagnetic field at the bottom of the pyramid would rise to the upper layers. The golden cup could have created a conductive path for energy to be directed upwards, directing into ionosphere. Taking everything in consideration, what we have discovered so far about the pyramids, it would be logical to conclude that one of the reasons for the superconducting materials used to create the Giza pyramid complex was generation of plasma energy, which was further transmitted wirelessly, either through the antennas we call obelisks, transmitters and receivers, or through natural means through the air to the surrounding area. In other words, they were utilizing power towers, if you will. So this is another important piece of a puzzle, and it's actually related to the King's Chamber now. As you can see, what on the bottom right part of the right picture, which is called Great Gallery, you can see in order to get to the Great Gallery, you have to go through this passageway, if you will. So there are some anomalies in this so-called Grand Gallery. The upper wall of the Grand Gallery near the entrance into the King's Chamber is made of granite, not limestone, which is very unusual. The entire wall shows deep dark stains that might be able to result of being exposed to tremendous heats, perhaps from explosive chemical reactions or super strong electrical discharges. Along the side ramp of the gallery are several rectangular holes or sockets evenly spaced to the entire distance of the ramps. The real purpose of these sockets is still not fully understood, but there are some indications that point towards the conclusion that the ancient Egyptians were using some sort of resonators to amplify the energy produced in the pyramids. In other words, what we are seeing in those devices are the ones that were utilized in those days. And I will also explain in more detail as we go. So it's clearly showing us that not just the sun, you can see the sun doesn't actually correspond with this diagram, if you will, what was left, because one ball of light, if you will, just shoots energy into another ball of light, if you will. So pretty much another thing which is also important to understand how this actually works is that generators generate current and transformers convert between current and voltage. A generator is a machine which, with the help of magnetic induction, converts mechanical energy into electrical energy. A transformer converts voltage into higher or lower voltage depending on the need. So pretty much what the Asians were doing, they were using those devices to control the energy which was generated. So take two electrical conductors, things that let electricity flow through them, and separate them with an insulator, a material that doesn't let electricity flow very well, and you make a capacitor, something that can store electrical energy. Adding electrical energy to a capacitor is called charging. Releasing the energy from a capacitor is known as discharging. So pretty much what they are doing, what the Max Planck Institute is doing nowadays, and they have produced a ball lighting type effect by discharging a high voltage capacitor in a tank of water. So what they were using, they were utilizing the energy that was actually an abundance from the underground water systems, if you will. Another thing why the people, the researchers, they're into the power plant theory, if you will, of the pyramids cannot figure it out because there are a couple of things which are missing. For example, there is a missing chamber here in the very close to the King's Chamber, if you will. And another thing, something was literally stolen from the King's Chamber. When you go inside the King's Chamber, you can see no drawings, no reliefs of life or of writings whatsoever. It's obviously showing that it was exposed to high heat, high pressure, high chemical reaction, and there is a granite shaft inside the King's Chamber, as you can see. It's completely opposite from where they were living, if you will. And you can see the burning marks, the exposure. Obviously they took something, there's some certain information which is going that this something was something very, very powerful. And how they did it, that's quite interesting. This is the guy that has remained to be known as Al-Mamut, and he was the thiefer, if you will. He actually stolen the artifact from the King's Chamber. And this is the hole that they artificially actually excavated because they couldn't carry, the artifact out of the pyramid. So I actually highlighted, the point how that actually was taken out, and you can see it's completely away from the main public entrance, if you will. And thanks to the muons, which I also explained, that void, that area, hidden area, if you will, has been discovered. So I will not bother you much with the muons, but I'll just briefly, because it's important. So the interior of the Great Pyramid has been probed using various forms of radiations, including cosmic muons. A muon is a type of subatomic particle. It's an elementary particle similar to the electron with electric charge of -1 e and a spin of 1/2, but much greater mass. So what is important is that they actually, the photons in the cosmic rays crash into air molecules, and in this crash pions are made. The pions undergo atomic decay into neutrinos and muons. So there is a organization that was called Scan Pyramid Mission. You know, it was an international mission, and they tried their best to find is there any voids or missing chambers in the Great Pyramids or different places. So it was combined effort by the Japanese and the French, if you will, you know, and they applied different techniques, you know, how to scan. And for example, in December 2015, in the Pane Pyramid industry in Egypt, they actually installed 81 selective films. And once when they selected, it took a while, you know, actually it was February 2016 when they actually took the films for the scanning, and Professor Morishima, he was in charge. He actually was trucking proton trucks, if you will, just to see how dense they are, and in order if there are some hidden chambers. And they found. The muon study has found evidence for a previously unknown chamber buried deep within the iconic structure, and it was there, and it's always matching, you know, whatever is it's how should I put it, here represented. That's the king's chamber on the top left picture, the mark where it's the new void is discovered, you know, and other scans are also have confirmed the virtual reality has recreated pretty much everything. And again, the Egyptian archaeologist Lam's new paradigm findings, you know, the same guy, if you will, and obviously they're covering up quite well, and you can see those people with dark glasses, you know, ties, or you know, they're always around when something like this happens, and there is always persons like those, you know, on the top right picture that will actually push the buttons, and if it's not necessary, and if it's necessary, the military will step in, of course. And that's the scientific research, and the heat signature also show why certain areas, you know, are like that. You know, as I mentioned, two of the shafts are not going directly towards the surface. You know, they're producing huge heat. You know, in other words, the steam was also involved, obviously, in what they were doing in the ancient times. And the chambers in Egypt's Great Pyramid concentrate radio waves. That's for sure. You know, so the computer simulation revealed electromagnetic properties of the huge structure of Giza. You know, so not to bother you too much. You know, it's just quite impressive. You know what this structure is actually doing. You know, it's just amazing stuff. A telluric current or earth current, how it's also known, is electric current which moves underground and through the sea. You know, and they were able to amplify this telluric current, if you will, and to transmit further. But nevertheless, whatever their magnificent was, they were always under control, you know, if you will, and they actually go down and in a very, very bad way, if you will, you know, because the dark forces literally were controlling everything, and there's so much bizarre stuff which are going, and all that magnificence was lost, as I was explained with 4,000 years ago that would happen. So this is another thing. This is a sad story. You know, when I was receiving the holographic visions about the pre-Columbian, it was worse than the Egyptian ones, because literally the Egyptian ones were under control, but the pre-Columbians, they lived among the extraterrestrials. So by pre-Columbian culture, we are talking about advanced pre-Columbian Mesoamerican civilizations such as Olmec, Teotihuacan, Maya, Zapotec, Mixtec, Houstec, Perucha, Toltec, and